Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to another edition of the Outdoor Magazine radio show right here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. How are you this morning, this afternoon? I say morning because we're sitting here in the studio and they're recording this in the morning, but I obviously realize people listen to this show and the podcast version of at many different times. I was a little distracted because I'm trying to text someone and open the radio show at the same time. The text is about turkey hunting, so that's very important. So I can't just ignore that. I've got to take care of that. It was an interesting opening weekend for me in the Michigan turkey woods, and it was very exciting. One of the most exciting turkey hunts I've ever had. Let me just respond to this. Okay, I know that's really rude, but I had to do that. Anyway, well, first of all, let's talk about the weather. Let me get my brain wrapped around the radio show here. Let's talk about the weather first of all. I know that in Michigan the weather is going to be screwy. I know it's going to be up and down. I know it's going to be a roller coaster. But can you remember a spring like this? I mean, it's been downright cold. It's been cold in the turkey woods. It's been cold sitting at my granddaughter Addison's softball games. I talked to a guy yesterday who was driving up from Detroit. He said there was an absolute a blizzard. It was a whiteout on I-75 in the third week of April. And it's supposed to be, cold still this weekend, rainy still this weekend? How is that going to affect your outdoor activities? Is it going to keep you out of the turkey woods? Is it going to keep you off the water? Is it going to keep you from looking for morels? I hope not. One thing we've learned is that in the outdoors, dealing with our outdoor passions, we have to deal with Mother Nature and make the most of what she throws at us. Can we change it? No. Can we change the weather? Of course not. Should we change our plans based on a weather forecast? I say absolutely not, because there have been too many times in the past where I have been burned by looking at a weather forecast, by looking at the temperatures, the rain, or usually the wind, saying, you know what, let's not go tomorrow. It doesn't look very good. I've learned, don't go by that. Don't go by the forecast unless it's just going to be an absolute gale to keep you off the water. But, wait until the morning. Get up early that morning, look at the weather forecast, walk outside, see what the weather looks like, and then get a feel for whether you should cancel or not. Because I know you work hard. I know you spend a lot of time in the shop. I know you spend a lot of time in the office. I know you spend a lot of time on the farm, on a tractor, whatever it is. So your free time, your leisure time is valuable, and we want to make the most of it. Well, Mother Nature plays a big role, but let's not pull the plug on plans until the last minute when we have to. Okay, getting back to my turkey season. You know I love turkey hunting, and it's one of my top 3 things in the outdoors. Turkey hunting, bear hunting, and walleye fishing. And this last weekend was the opener of Michigan's turkey season, and I was ready. I was hunting my #1 piece of property. I love it because it's real close to the house, and it's got birds on it. And my buddy Doug graciously allows me to hunt there, and I do appreciate it. I had a new crossbow this year, and I was excited to use that. I'd spent a lot of time getting this thing dialed in. It was dead on, absolutely perfect. I had done my scouting. I had hunted this piece of property before, but I'd been out there the last couple of weeks in the morning waiting to see what the birds were doing. I knew where the birds were roosting. I knew where the birds wanted to go, and I knew how they had to get there. So I set up my Wraith 270 see-through ground blind on the north end of the property. The birds were roosted on the south end of the property, just over into the neighbor's property. They were roosted about 200 yards to the south. They were going to walk through the woods next to me on the way to the fields to the north. My plan was I'm going to intercept those birds. I'm going to call them off the roost so they have to come out and walk in the open field in front of me. Bow's dialed in. Scouting is done. I'm out there early. Decoys are set up. And all is wonderful in the Michigan turkey woods on the opening morning. I heard, and it was cold, I heard the birds gobble on the roost. I heard what I thought were 3 different birds, and they didn't sound like jakes, they sounded like adult birds. I did not call to them on the roost. They went quiet. I waited until I thought they were probably on the ground, and I made one little call, chirp, 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 and gobble, 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 gobble. From just beyond the trees where I am sitting, I didn't think the birds were going to be that close yet. A bird, turns out there were 2 of them, let out this monstrous gobble, and I knew they were coming in my direction. I thought, holy cow, here we go, and the season is just getting started. So I start my camera. I start my Tacticam camera on the crossbow. I got the bow up on the shooting sticks. I've got 2 decoys in front of me at about 16 yards and 18 yards. And around the corner comes a longbeard. He's not in strut, but he's coming, and it's obvious he's coming to my call. He sees the decoys, he's coming to me. And then another longbeard rounds the corner, and he's coming too. I thought, this is going to be the shortest Avery turkey hunt in history, because it's like 6:29 at this point. Again, the crossbow is dialed in. I've been shooting it a lot. I put the 20-yard crosshair right on the center of the lead bird. I'm thinking, I better be careful. I'm going to shoot the beard off this bird. I don't care about that. So I put the 20-yard crosshair on the center of the bird. I wait for him to get to 20 yards. I squeeze the trigger. The arrow takes off, and it goes to the left. I mean, it knocked some feathers off the bird. I mean, it shaved some feathers off, but it didn't hit body. He flies off. I'm looking at him through the side of the blind. He's fine. He's like, what happened there? What happened there? And he keeps wandering. He's not hurt. But the other bird that was with him comes into my decoy, puffs up, struts up, and spends about 5 minutes doing circles around my decoy at 18 yards, pecking at the decoy. So now I'm faced with a question, well, do I take another shot at this bird, the second bird? What happened with the first bird? And I was genuinely confused. I thought, I have spent so much time behind this new bow, I know it's dead on, and it obviously shot to the left. At this point, I don't have the confidence to shoot at that second bird. So I let him wander off. I'm thinking, what happened? What happened? How could this be? And then it hit me. At the last minute, the Friday night before the season started, I decided to put a Tacticam on my crossbow. Now, a Tacticam is a very small point-of-view camera that allows you to see what you're shooting at and record it on video without having a separate video camera. I mounted it to the rail of the crossbow below the scope and didn't think it would have any impact, any change on the impact of my arrow at all. And it shouldn't have. In theory, it should not have. So I get out of the woods, I go to shoot my bow, and it is indeed shooting to the left. Wow. So I dialed it back in, I resighted it back in with the Tacticam on there. I still don't know how mounting a Tacticam to the rail of your crossbow could make any change in the impact. But something changed, and that's the only thing I did. So it was an unfortunate lesson. It was a rookie mistake. I'm not a rookie. I'm not an expert, but I'm not a rookie, and I made a rookie mistake. I made a change in my gear and did not go back out and shoot the bow. Lesson learned. You're always learning, right? I don't care how many times you've done this, how much time you spent on the water, how much time you spent on the woods. There's always room for error, and there's always room for mistakes, and there's always room to learn. And I learned this lesson. So now, the property I'm on, again, it's a nice piece of property, but my opportunities are very limited. I'm set up in a field it was not turkey fever, not at all. The bow was shooting to the left. Though I had turkey fever, I was excited, absolutely. But I verified when I got out of the woods, the bow was shooting indeed to the left. It was not me, it was the bow, but it was my fault that the bow was shooting to the left because I didn't follow up. So now I think I've educated those birds, and I have a very small property to hunt with. I've got about a 300-yard strip, so it's not like I've got room to move and I can't go back into the woods. It's like I am there to intercept them. It's either going to happen on the south end of the property or the north end of the property. And now they're educated. So now I'm looking for spot number 2. Hey, that's the way it goes. Trout opener this weekend across the state. Walleye opener in the lower. If you're in the UP, you'll have to wait until the 15th. Smelt run is wrapping up in the UP. It's a big weekend in the outdoors. Hopefully Mother Nature will cooperate. And I think I will get another chance at a big bird. It's just a matter of being patient. But you know what? I am indeed patient. Coming up on this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show after the break, Captain Paul Schlafley of Riverside Charters out of Manistee talks about early season trolling on Lake Michigan. Then Nick Buggia of the Michigan Wildlife Council in hour number 2. Dave Rose on trout fishing. Bob Beaudry, one of the Pure Michigan Hunt winners. And in our third hour, Drew Youngedyke, now the head PR guy at Trout Unlimited. And we'll wrap it all up with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. That's right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Alpena on WZTK 105.7 FM. You can hear us in, let's go to Traverse City, WTCM 580 AM. And let's go north of the bridge to Manistee, WTIQ 1490 AM, 95.3 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Rapid River Knives. You know I have a Rapid River knife in my pocket right now, as I always do. I can't say enough about this company, the quality of their products. A lifetime guarantee, handmade by craftsmen in the Yooper. Check out their website, rapidriverknifeworks.us. That's rapidriverknifeworks.us. Or better yet, go to their showroom on US 2 just east of Rapid River, and you'll see what I mean. Big selection of knives. You can pick out your knife there. You can have it engraved while you're on the spot and walk out the door with a piece of art that is designed to last for a lifetime and designed to be used. The website, rapidriverknifeworks.us. That's rapidriverknifeworks.us. I was talking before the break about all the different things going on in the outdoors this time of year. Turkey season, morel hunting, walleye fishing, trout season opens, and let's not forget the end of the river steelhead season and early season trolling on Lake Michigan as well. When I think about Lake Michigan, fishing the rivers on the west side of the state, fishing out of Manistee, a lot of names and a lot of faces come to my mind, people I've worked with over the years. But Paul Schlafley comes right to the top. Paul is with Riverside Charters out of Manistee. He's been on the water out there his entire life. He's still fishing these days, and he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Paul, welcome. How have you been?
I'm doing good, buddy. I'm on my way to Florida, believe that or not.
Hey.
I had a trip I couldn't refuse, so I'm going.
Well, good for you.
Trip, believe that.
Hold on, you're leaving some of the best freshwater fishing in the country, heading down to Florida.
Yeah, I had a trip I couldn't refuse. I got buddies down there, captains, and they're down there catching sailfish and dolphin and tuna and tarpon, and so I took off a week. I just got off a long run of river fishing, so I just taking a break before I start hitting the big water, getting ready for King's to show up here soon. So in Manistee,
yeah.
But
I don't blame you.
I've only been out in the big lake a couple of times this spring. The weather's been so messed up, winds. But it's been pretty good fish, and they've been getting a lot of lake trout, of course, and then there's been a few more browns around this spring, so that's kind of encouraging. A lot of guys are catching a lot more browns than I've heard in the last few years. There's even been a few kings show up already. So it's coming. Hopefully this weather will straighten up.
Well,
things will get going.
Yeah, that's for sure. Listen, I got to talk more about this Florida fishing trip. Tarpon, I've never caught a tarpon. How exciting is that? Going after sailfish, tarpon. I mean, have you done this before, Paul, or is this going to be your first trip?
I've caught everything, but I've never caught a tuna. But I've caught tarpon, and yeah, they're amazing. That's great fun, great sport fish. Just a lot of fun. They're really fighting fish, jump. It's pretty crazy. So it's definitely, if you've never done it, you definitely want to try it.
Yeah, exactly. What's it like for a veteran captain like you who's been in the water for decades? What's it like for you to go fish with another charter captain? That's got to be an interesting experience.
I like doing it because I just like the feel of how a customer feels when they go fishing with a captain. And it's kind of cool. You go with a different captain and makes you feel like the customer, the guy going fishing with a captain. So it kind of a different, how to treat people when you get them on your boat. It kind of helps you, get that feeling what people feel like when they're going on a, charter fishing trip. So it's kind of cool. Yeah. And I've done other trips and, kind of all over the country, and I like doing it for sure, going with other captains.
And probably nice not to have to worry about finding fish and catching fish. Your job is just to enjoy the experience when you're coming along as a client.
Exactly, and then you might learn something. You definitely learn a lot from captains, different captains fishing with them. And so it's pretty cool going with different captains.
Well, have a good trip, Paul. That sounds like a lot of fun. How was your?
Always got to learn.
Well, that's interesting. Even you're still learning?
I'm very open-minded. I'm always want to learn. There's always, it seems like everything changes every year, especially in the salmon business, fishing business. It's always changed and it never stays the same. So you always got to kind of be adaptive to when things change and what lures or fish are biting and whatnot. But, so yeah, you just want to be open-minded, and you always want to try to learn and be open-minded when it comes to different techniques and stuff. And, just part of the fishing trade, I guess. So.
Well, that's very interesting. I mean, the fish. I was going to say the fishery doesn't change, or does it? I mean, do the fish change from year to year, or is it just the way that anglers target those fish changes?
I don't know. Just for me, like I'll have rigs. I catch them on one year, and the next year I can't get a bite on it. And I don't know if it's a water clarity thing, but it seems like it always is changing. I don't know. You got lures that definitely catch fish every year, but some years you get out different hot rigs, and so you just got to be always trying to figure out what the fish want from year to year. Yeah, it changes every year. Not every year. Some years you catch them, like I say, on the same. You got lures that are definitely always catch fish every year, but always trying to learn new stuff for sure. You got to try to keep yourself open-minded when it comes to fishing that big lake. Definitely.
Because there's a lot of water out there, a lot of room to find fish. When you leave the dock in the morning, then, of all the different choices you have of where to go, what baits to run, what rigs to run, how do you know where to start? What are you basing those decisions on?
Well, there's things I got an advantage. I'm usually fishing every day, and I'm talking to, a group of guys that every day that, they're all over the place where I fish out of, they're north and south and whatever. But you'll take that information, day to day and try to put it together where you're going to go. And a lot of times you're catching your fish, certain areas until you get a wind blowing, the water changes temps and whatnot, and then everything changes. So you just kind of got to adapt to it, to weather conditions. So when you get a blow, try to figure out where they're going to go after that blow, and that's usually what changes where you're going to go day to day. But the fish can be in close or way out, trying to judge where they're going to be from trip to trip. So you try to take that from what that water conditions do, after the blow, the lake got cold or warmer or whatnot. where you're going to fish.
Explain that more. I mean, I've got a sense what you're talking about, but I think a lot of people are going to say, what is Paul talking about? When you get a big wind, a big blow, how does that change water temp?
Like a south wind for us warms our water up and makes the thermal go down deep. Generally, the more south wind you get, the thermal set up really good. You'll get like a good temperature break. A lot of times, you want that break down deeper to concentrate the fish more. But a north wind will do the complete opposite. It'll flip the lake upside down and bring the cold water in, and then a lot of times the fish move way out. Sometimes they move in. It varies. I mean, sometimes they're right at the pier heads after a north blow for 2-3 days. And an east wind will do the same thing. After it blows, it pushes all our warm water out. And but generally, we pray for south winds. And south winds are what sets our water up in our lake. And generally, especially this time of year, south winds really start setting that thermal up and warming up the water. And that's generally when them kings will start showing up in the spring. As soon as the water starts warming up, and the kingfishing gets really on fire. Especially coming up here in about 2-3 weeks, should be on fire. Generally the last few years, right before Memorial Weekend, that water starts setting up, warming up, and we have some pretty good fishing. Pretty good kingfishing. Of course, you get lake trout and steelhead too.
Water temp is everything this time of year, isn't it?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, right now it's cold. We've had all this north wind, and the lake's pretty cold. I haven't fished the last few days, but it was like 42 degrees. The guys I talked to were out. Everybody's still fishing right in close, right up on the shore where the warmest water is. There's some guys fishing out on our bank catching lake trout. A lot of lake trout around right now. Nice sized ones too. But yeah, it'll warm up here. Hopefully this weather will straighten up and get things rolling. So I just got a little break on here, so we're going to go fish where it's warm.
Good for you. That fishing up near shore, trolling up in the shallows, though, I've done that with you. I mean, I'm a skinny water guy. That's a riot. I love that.
Exactly. You're right in. Everything's close to you, and you're not running all the long let cores. Light lines out there, and it's definitely a lot of fun. Right next to shore. And that's what's kind of going on right now. Everybody's fishing in close. And, it's been, they've been getting a few more browns definitely this year, so it's pretty encouraging. See the browns around. So, and then there's some alewife just starting to show up, and that'll bring a lot of salmon into the alewife when they start coming in to spawn. So that things will start get going here. Plus the smelt have been around too. So they've been getting quite a few smelt. A lot of guys that fishery's starting to come back. Guys dipping for them. So
yeah, I've heard of that. There's been some pretty good smelt runs across the state this year. That's good to hear.
Yeah, that definitely. Hopefully the lake's coming back good. So it seems to be good. So I know we had a lot of alewife last year. The fish were full. A lot of fish were running good size. Seems like we caught a lot of different age class of salmon, too, last summer. So that was definitely encouraging for our numbers of salmon being around. So it should be a good year, I'm thinking, this year.
We're talking with Captain Paul Schlafly of Riverside Charters, the website riversidecharters.com, riversidecharters.com. Paul is on his way to Florida for a saltwater fishing adventure. If you want a freshwater fishing adventure, book a trip with Paul. Go to the website riversidecharters.com. That's riversidecharters.com. We got to take a break here in just a second. When we come back, we'll talk more with Paul. But this guy, he's an icon on the water. I remember one time fishing with him out of Manistee, early season, about this time of year, maybe even a little bit earlier. We were trolling 4 browns up in that shallow water. We land a 20-pound brown. Have you ever seen a 20-pound brown trout? I've only seen one of them in my life, I think, and it was with Captain Paul Schlafly. Paul picks that fish up out of the net. He goes, yeah, that's a nice fish. And he puts it in the cooler, and he's ready to move on. I'm like, Paul, hold on. That thing is a trophy. That thing is a monster. That thing is a giant. We got to get some pictures. We got to get some video. But for Paul, it was just another day on the water. He does book up fast. He's a very popular captain. So if you want a trip this spring or this summer or early fall, now is the time to book it. Go to the website, riversidecharters.com. That's riversidecharters.com. You can book a trip right online. We will take a break. When we come back, we will continue and wrap up our conversation with Captain Paul Schlafly of Riverside Charters in Manistee, and then we'll turn to Nick Buggia of the Michigan Wildlife Council. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Battle Creek on WBCK 95.3 FM. You can hear us in Sandusky on WMIC 660 AM 95.3 FM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in Iron Mountain, WMIQ 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Michigan-based Whack-'em and Plack-'em, a very cool and unique way to show off your trophies. Use them with shoulder mounts, European mounts, even fish. For details, check out the website nontypicalinnovations.com. That's nontypicalinnovations.com, and you will see what I mean. While you are online, please check out my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then head on over to Paul Schlafly's website, which is riversidecharters.com. That's riversidecharters.com. Paul is on his way right now, driving down to Florida for a saltwater fishing adventure. If you want a freshwater fishing adventure on Lake Michigan, Paul is one of the best choices you can make. Paul, I appreciate your time this morning. Before the break, we were talking about browns. You say there's more of them showing up this year. Are there enough of them out there to target it? To target them? Could you go out there and do a brown trout fishing trip right now?
I mean, realistically, you're probably going to go out and get a couple. I mean, but you're going to get a mixed bag of fish, too. I mean, some salmon are just starting to show up, and lake trout, get a lot of lake trout mixed in with them. So, I mean, you definitely got a chance of catching a variety of fish with some browns thrown in there. I mean, of course, we don't have the number of browns like we used to, but maybe we'll get them back. I'm hoping. The DNR's been trying, so hopefully they've still been planting them every year, so they really have a good fishery over in Wisconsin on them, and hopefully that we can start seeing that again. I mean, like we used to have in the 80s and 90s. It was unbelievable back then. But yeah, definitely, a guy can go out and get, on a day. I mean, I haven't been out personally much because I've been in the river, but the guys I talk to a lot of guys, they've been getting, on a good day, they'll get 4 browns mixed in with a bunch of lake trout. And they, like I said, the kings are just starting to show up. So should only get better from here on out.
Do you get coho? Do you get those little coho that far north?
Some. It seems like the coho seem to stay a little bit farther south than us. I mean, not saying we don't get them, but we don't get the numbers of coho like they get down like St. Joe and Michigan City and Grand Haven and whatnot. They seem to be down there more this time of year, but they will start. We will get some mixed in too, but generally not like they get down south this time of year. We see a lot more, in the summertime, and especially like in August.
Yeah.
August is our busiest time for salmon. So, but yeah, they're not the fishery that they get down south on the coho, seems to be. But the kings, we do have a pretty good king fishery in the spring here, so that's common. I mean, last year was really good. It seemed like they stayed around quite a while last year too. We had kings pretty much throughout the whole summer last year, so it's always nice to have them around, stick around like that. Some years they'll kind of disappear for a month or 3 weeks and show back up as the summer goes. But last year they seem to stick around quite a bit last year. So every year's kind of different. It's all water temperature dictated what these fish do. The lake changes just the way the winds blow.
Well, and the king, I mean, that's what your clients want, right? That's the glory fish of the Great Lakes, a king salmon, a Chinook salmon. And I'm thinking about trolling in their shallow water, 10, 15 feet of water up on the sandbars. You hook into a good-sized king, a 2-year-old king. What a riot. You got your hands full in that shallow water.
Exactly. I mean, they're the hardest fighting fish in the lake. And they're, especially in the spring, they're really good eat. They're just prime to eat that time of year when we get them. And there's that's spring kingfishing's a lot of fun. It's good fishery, really. It's usually pretty good numbers when they show up. In the last few years, it's been around just before Memorial Weekend. Seems like they're showing up pretty strong. As that lake's warming up, they really, we have a pretty good fishing going on. And, so I'm looking forward to that coming for sure. As soon as I get back, I'll be looking for them. So I'll be gone like a week. Just a good break for me to get away from. Try to do different stuff. I like to go different places. So
is the big boat in the water now?
I actually didn't get it. I'm not putting it in this year till I get back. So it's going in next week I'll have it in the 1st of May, and I was running river trips pretty solid up till this last week, and so I just decided to wait till May to put it in this year and try to target the salmon when they get in here good. So,
how was your river fishing this spring?
It was really good. Had a really great spring. Yeah, it was pretty good numbers. The run was a little goofy this year because we had hardly any winter, no ice in the rivers. But I had a really good February and March. My numbers were excellent. And the spring, the fish start getting up in April. They start spawning, and you got to go up towards Tippy Dam, and where I fish out of mostly is up on the Manistee River. So when they start spawning, you got to go up in the crowds. But that's typical April fishing. But it was a good run this year. I was pretty happy.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I hope you have a wonderful spring and summer season out there, Paul, and have fun. Good luck on this Florida trip.
All right, thanks, Mike. I appreciate it, buddy.
Always a pleasure talking to you, my friend, Captain Paul Schlafley of Riverside Charters. The website, riversidecharters.com. That's riversidecharters.com. Again, if you want to listen, in Michigan, we are blessed with a lot of very, very good, very good charter captains. I mean, I think the best in the country. But Paul Schlafley is one of the most well-known, and in my opinion, one of the best out there on Lake Michigan. He fishes out of the port of Manistee. His website, riversidecharters.com. That's riversidecharters.com. Go to the website now, book a trip, and you will see what I mean. I've sent a lot of people his way, and nobody has ever been disappointed. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, we'll wrap up this first hour with Nick Buggia of the Michigan Wildlife Council. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Caro on WKYO 1360 AM and WIDL 92.1 FM. You can hear us in Port Huron on WPHM 1380 AM, and you can hear us north of the bridge in the Sioux on News Talk 1400 WKNW. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Killer Food Plots. Michigan-based Killer Food Plots can be your source for property management and, of course, food plots. This is the time of year when you want to start getting ready. Get your soil samples. Rich Krzan says first thing you want to do is get your soil samples and then go to the website killerfoodplots.com. That's killerfoodplots.com to see what services they offer, what products they offer. You can get in touch with the folks at Killer Food Plots through the website. Maybe you're looking for property consultation, maybe habitat improvement, or maybe just seed. Killerfoodplots.com is your source, and they can help you out. I want to turn our attention now to a group that I am a big supporter. I've been working with these guys for several years, since they formed, a few years ago now, and it's the Michigan Wildlife Council. The Michigan Wildlife Council, in a nutshell, was formed to educate the non-hunting and angling public about the benefits of what we as outdoorsmen and women do for the state of Michigan, for the environment, for wildlife, and for the economy. Nick Buggia is with the Michigan Wildlife Council, and they're here for Generations campaign. Nick, always a pleasure. Listen, I'm sorry, the confusion was on my end last week. You were supposed to join us. I screwed up, but I appreciate your flexibility, and welcome back to the show.
Oh, no worries, and thanks for having me.
Well, it's always a pleasure because I love talking about what you folks are involved in. It seems like it's a constantly evolving campaign. Where are we these days, Nick?
Yeah, so we just kind of got all the data from last year's campaign, where we really focused hard on Southeast Michigan, Black Michiganders, in that area of the state, and it was kind of. The findings were positive, I think, overall. The majority of the folks that we surveyed supported hunting and angling quite a bit. The reasons for that varied, or maybe weren't the reasons we were trying to communicate. But at the end of the day, they supported hunting and fishing. So that was an overall positive. This year, we're really going to try to focus on our target audience is going to be, the younger generation, and our primary messaging again is going to be, hunting and fishing are a management tool and necessary for healthy populations, but our sort of secondary message, which we're trying to create right now, is really about the experiences that hunting and fishing provide, and not necessarily the experience of actually hunting and fishing, but, hunting and fishing dollars pay for maybe the boat launch you go kayaking in, or maybe the area where you're walking your dog is paid for by hunting and fishing dollars. Or, this time of year you've got the woodcock migration, and I drove past a couple of WMAs recently, and they were just full of birders, which was, nice to see the public taking advantage of the spaces that hunters and anglers help to create. And so we're trying to kind of come up with some messaging that, let's the younger generation know that those opportunities are out there, and that they're paid for by hunting and fishing dollars.
So will the scope of the campaign be broadened geographically then? Are you going to look more at the rest of the state now?
Yeah, I think so. We've always, well, I don't want to say we've always, but last year we really did focus kind of just in Southeast Michigan. We're going to open that back up like we have in years past, and kind of focus more on the rest of the state as well. But we really wanted to. We kind of saw some that area in Southeast Michigan just wasn't moving as much as we wanted it to. So we really wanted to take some time, figure out what was going on in that area, and see if we could, make some gains, which I think we have. But, now that we have, we're going to see what happens when we move to the rest of the state, if those gains are maintained, or if they get, diluted a little bit. Maybe we got to tweak some things. But I think this year you'll see us kind of back in the rest of the state.
Well, I think you're qualified to say we've always, because I think you've been there at the Michigan Wildlife Council since the beginning, haven't you?
Yeah. So, when we first started, we kind of focused on sort of the Grand Rapids metro area, the Detroit metro area, and then we kind of expanded, Saginaw, Flint, and then kind of statewide. So I guess at least internally, our view of statewide might be different than the general public of statewide. But yes, we're trying to have a bigger footprint this year than we did last year.
Well, Nick, I'm a big supporter of what you guys do. I mean, if we can get the word out about how important we as hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers are to the non-hunting and angling and shooting and trapping public, it's all good, and you guys are doing a great job. The website is hereformioutdoors.org, hereformioutdoors.org. Check it out. And the group is the Michigan Wildlife Council, a group that I've worked with for several years now, and hope to continue to work with them well into the future, because, again, I think it is a positive message they're sending out there, and it is a very important message, and I'm pleased to be able to help them get the word out. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back, we're going to talk about trout fishing and more with Dave Rose of Wild Fishing, then Bob Beaudry, one of the wild Pure Michigan Hunt winners, coming up in hour 2 of Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polar Craft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Well, thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 2 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show. Here on the Outdoor Magazine radio network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. I try to make it clear every week that this is first and foremost a radio show. And I do that as much as anything maybe for my own purposes, it probably doesn't matter to you, but I like to make the distinction that this is something different from the many, many fine outdoor podcasts created here in Michigan. Podcasting is a wonderful thing, but the Outdoor Magazine radio show is kind of unique, and it's also the biggest outdoor radio show in the state. It is produced, syndicated, recorded, distributed as a radio show. And you can hear it on 33 stations across the state. But I am also a big fan of podcasting. I think it's a wonderful media outlet. I think it's a great tool for anybody. If you have a story you want to tell, if you have information you want to get out there, if you are an expert in an area, or if you are curious about an area, podcasting is an easy way to get into the media, social media. You don't need a lot of gear. You can literally do it from your phone. You can record a podcast and upload it from your phone. It doesn't get any easier. So I do make the Outdoor Magazine radio show available as a podcast. You can hear that podcast on my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com. It's on my Facebook page as well. It's on Amazon Music, Audible, Twitter. Although, is Twitter still a thing? Does anybody use Twitter? I never post anything directly to Twitter. I just have it secondarily posted. I guess I really don't care about Twitter. LinkedIn, Apple Music, Google Play, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, Spotify, TuneIn, Stitcher, Player FM, Deezer, Odyssey, and even on YouTube. And as I say, I am a fan of podcasting. Every month I produce podcasts for Offshore Tackle, Angler Quest Boats, Polar Craft Boats, and Primal Outdoors. And today, when we're done recording this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, we're going to record this month's Primal Outdoors podcast with Tyler Jordan, the son of Bill Jordan of Realtree. So that'll be kind of a treat. Keep an ear out for that as well. Regardless, though, of whether you're listening to the broadcast version of the show, which I do encourage you to check that out if you can, first and foremost, or the podcast as a backup, I do appreciate you being along with us. There are a lot of different media sources you could be consuming right now. There's a lot of things pulling at you from every direction. I mean, you've got your hunting and fishing passions. You've got your responsibilities around the house, around the yard, around the farm. You've got your family obligations. So a lot of different things pulling at you. And the fact that you're listening to my voice at all means a lot to me, and I do certainly appreciate it. As I look at this weekend here in the outdoors, I'm thinking, okay, early season big water fishing. I'm thinking morels. I'm thinking turkey hunting. And I can't forget about trout season. Trout season opens across the state this weekend here in Michigan. It used to be for me when I was a kid growing up, that was basically the holiday. The trout season opener and then the firearm deer season November 15th. Now, I have gotten away from that, and it's probably unfortunate that I have, but it's still a big deal in our state and a lot of people looking forward to this weekend. To talk about that and more, Dave Rose, outdoor writer and fishing guide, joins us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. David, welcome back. How are you?
You know, I'm pretty darn good and looking forward to trout season, just as a lot of people are.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. So glad to hear that. I do wonder, though, Dave, has the trout opener been, I don't want to say minimized, but has it been diffused at all? Because there are, some streams that are open year round. We get, the early trout openers and stuff. Or is it still a big deal?
It's a big deal depending on if what type of fishing you like to do, of course. And what I think in my little pea brain has happened to help diffuse it, it's not only trout opener anymore. Now here in the Lower Peninsula, walleye, pike, and muskie fishing open up at the same time, same day. So it's diffused that way. It used to be you had trout opener, and boy, if you love the trout fish, maybe you'd grab the family and friends, go up to a little resort or something like that, spend the weekend, trout fish, one of the big rivers. Oh, it was wonderful. Probably didn't catch much, but you just had a great time. And then maybe in a week or two, walleye and pike would open up. Oh, you could do the same thing, or somebody else would. So it's kind of hurt some of the resort kind of aspect of it, diffusing it. But also, I think some of the limelight gets diffused because, somebody's going to go walleye fishing instead of trout fishing.
So I didn't remember that. So the walleye opener used to be May 15th statewide?
Correct.
Ah, okay.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That was open statewide. And then, of course, now in the lower peninsula, it opens up the last Saturday of April along with trout season. And then in the upper peninsula, you still have the walleye, pike, and muskie opener May 15th.
Is it a little early to be on the trout streams in the Yooper right now and have some success or not?
Well, you can have success. There's still quite a bit of snow in a lot of places, depending on what part of the Yooper you go. They're forecasted this weekend, let's say up towards the Manistee area where I happen to go every once in a while. Yeah, they're talking, 10, 12 inches of snow maybe again this weekend. So, but I remember here in the lower, there had been many years I've walked knee deep to go back to the river stream. And then years like this year where I got to mow my lawn before I go,
And I was saying in the first hour, I say this often in the show, to me, that's one of the joys of our outdoor passions and pursuits is that we are constantly at the mercy of the fish and game that we're pursuing and Mother Nature. We just have to deal with that and try to make the most of it.
Yeah, especially right here, 45th parallel, we have, well, I always say we supposedly have 4 seasons because sometimes, last week here in the Traverse City area where I'm at, it was darn near 90 degrees. That was, yeah, ta-da, take that.
Yeah.
And that's why I got to mow my lawn. But yeah, we pretty much have the 4 seasons, and, the trout opener opens up right when, we could be the remnants of winter or we could be the early signs of summer.
Does the trout opener to you mean grabbing a fly rod and heading to the stream, or does it mean grabbing your spinning rod and maybe a crawler and some split shot?
For me, it tends to be the crawler, split shot, spinning rod type of deal, but only because, it's still pretty early. Well, this morning I talked to you here, and it did snow here. It didn't stick, but it snowed. And so what happens, though, things are still cool, so you don't have a lot of bug hatches. So the dry fly anglers and stuff like that, they might suffer a little bit. Obviously, you can use nymphs and, all sorts of things like that, streamers. But for me, it's usually, I've got a lot of these tiny little, when I say tiny, they're only a foot wide type of streams where there's brook trout and stuff that live in there. And you'd swear some of them, they turn sideways in the creek and they get stuck. So, yeah, it's for me, I love the worm dabbling. There's an art to it. It's not just a given. But sometimes, I'm also an avid fly angler. I probably own more fly rod and reel combos than most avid fly rod guys and gals.
I'm fascinated by this topic of these real tiny cricks. And I know it's creek. I say crick. Talk to me more about that. First of all, I'm not asking you, where they are, but how do you find these things?
Well, there's a lot of maps out there that show a little blue line, going across a road or something like that. Well, there was a major company years ago before the internet, but they had a DVD and it was about fishing the blue line. And it was about going out and looking at your map and seeing those blue lines crossing under a road and going dabbling cast a lure, do whatever. And yeah, so I do that. A lot of times it's just me. Well, I know there's a major river over here. There's always feeder cracks, whatever you want to call them, streams, fissures, hollers. Anyway, and so sometimes I'll just drive roads that are parallel with a major river, and then all of a sudden I'll cross this tiny little thing, and I'm like, well, there's only one way to find out if there's fish in there. Wow. And you can't even just do it once, because sometimes the bite's off, or somebody might even have already been there or something. So it's more about, I if I see water, I'll fish it just to see what's in there.
That is very cool. And in these tiny little creeks, are you seeing just little 5-6 inch brookies, or might you pull a bigger fish, maybe even a brown or something out of there?
Yeah, you'd be surprised at some of the stuff. Some of these little streams, these tiny little things you don't even have to jump, just walk over. I've caught, maybe there's rainbows or steelhead in a lake that they connect to, and I've caught like 2-foot long steelhead out of a creek that's only 1 inch or 1 inch. Well, some of them are only 1 inch, but 12 inches wide.
Wow. Hang tight, Dave. I want to follow up on this and more. Where do we find you online? You got a website up these days, or we find you on social media? Just look for your writing, or what?
I'm like everyone else. I'm still working, but when I finally get done, just go to davidarose.com, and all of a sudden there won't be a blank screen, and you'll actually see a webpage there.
davidarose.com. That sounds wonderful. We're talking with David A. Rose here on the Outdoor Magazine Show. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk more about trout fishing in Michigan on the opening weekend of this trout season. It's also the opener of walleye and pike season in the lower. If you're in the Yooper, you'll have to wait until May 15th. So you got a lot of things to do this weekend, a lot of choices to make, but aren't they great choices to have? Great time of year to live in our great state of Michigan. More with Dave Rose coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine Show in Sheboygan on Big Country Gold, WCBY, 1240 AM, 100.7 FM. You can hear us in Ludington on News 97.98, 98.7 WLDN. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Marquette on WDMJ 1320 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by VersaSkins. Just change your skin for the season you're in. Company owner Paul Perone has come up with a great concept. Why buy a whole bunch of different sets of hunting clothes in different camo patterns when you can buy one good quality set and then snap on and zip on an outer camo skin of a different pattern? It literally takes a minute to change from blaze orange to snow camo to whatever you want. Go to their website, versaskins.com. You'll see what I mean, versaskins.com. Change your skin for the season you're in at VersaSkins, versaskins.com. We're talking now about this opening weekend of trout season here in our great state of Michigan with Dave Rose, David A. Rose, outdoor writer, fishing guide. Dave, do you are you still guiding people? Would you take people out trout fishing?
I don't do the trout fishing thing as much. It's mostly if someone really wants to go with me, I'll overcharge them and take them on some of the inland lakes around here via my boat. When I say overcharge, I say that in jest because, being a guy, cost of everything's gone up, and some people are pretty amazed at how much it might cost to go fishing. However, I do still guide. Like I said, in the boat, I don't do the river scene or take people wade fishing or anything anymore.
All right, let's go back to the, again, I'm going to call them cricks, and I know it's...
well, I'll call them cricks with you.
All right, okay. All right, these little cricks that are so narrow you can jump across them. How do you fish something like that? Number one, you probably got tag alders and all kinds of brush growing across the stream. It's got to be real thick in there. How do you get in there, and how do you fish that water?
Well, you'd be surprised. Sometimes it is very thick, but sometimes it is not. There's a lot of fields or just slightly open areas or maybe a cedar swamp where these things go through. So there's not a lot of real thick tag alders or anything like that. So, but I tend to use a way longer fishing rod than most people. So 7.5 to 8 foot long ultralight rod, because I don't want to get near the side of that creek. I don't want my foot vibrations. I don't want my shadow. I don't want any of that thing near it. I want to be able to dabble my worm right down into a little hole, a run, or under a log or something like that. And that's what I do. So, instead of having a little 3 foot, 4 foot rod, which I do there's some specific places where that comes in handy, but for the most part, it's a 7.5 foot ultralight rod.
I remember now my dad, who was an avid small stream fisherman, he would say, don't put your shadow on the water, don't get close, don't let them feel the vibration. Are those fish that squirrely?
Oh, yeah. I mean, remember, these are fish. There's a lot of predators out there that want to eat them. You think of the bears in Alaska eating salmon. Well, they do that same thing in small streams. There's birds of prey especially, hawks and eagles and even a blackbird or whatever. They're going to grab fish and eat them. There's herons. There's all sorts of stuff. I mean, you ever watch a blue heron on the side of the lake there fishing? Mm-hmm. It doesn't move, and it's got a skinny neck and head, and, it probably looks like a stick or something when it's standing there in the shadow or whatever. So, no, that is probably the number one mistake people make. I got a couple spots where, the creek goes under the road, comes out of, a tube on the other end. you can see where people before me have walked right down to the side and dabbled their worm and who knows whatever. I still stand way back at the road, and with that longer rod, give my little chunk of whatever a cast, get it down in there, and I put no shadow and no vibration that way.
So are you casting your crawler upstream and letting it bounce back down, or are you running it downstream from where you're at? What are you doing?
Well, D, all the above. However, usually, just depends on the situation, but usually I'm not casting up and bringing it down. Again, that is just in the situation I'm in. I'm usually on the side of the creek or higher up, so I let it drift down from above, going downstream, or, I'm at the side of it, giving it a lob out there and letting it drift as natural as possible with no weight. I usually use, a chunk of nightcrawler, and I just have a small Aberdeen hook, maybe size 12 or something or not 12, 8, and a chunk of worm, and that's it. No split shot or anything like that. I want that piece of meat to flow as, perfectly with the current as possible.
That is so old school and so pure and simple and basic. It's wonderful.
And I'm really, I love basic stuff. I'm a basic guy, and I love it. I love my electronics. I love this. I love that. It's just amazing what's going on. But man, sometimes there's and that's why I like to surf fish. You're not using electronics. You're not doing this and doing that. You're using the eyeballs, seeing where there's a drop off or something, and lobbing a bait out there. Well, same thing with this, brook trout and brown trout fishing in these small streams. It's, it's as back to basics as you can get, and it works. And I mean, you just have a rod and a few hooks and some worms, and off to the races you go.
Full night crawler, half night crawler, a piece of a crawler?
I usually use, a full night crawler. I'll break it into thirds, basically. Because you don't want it too big. Well, it depends. Again, I may be in a river near my home that's a river. You could actually kayak down or something. And yeah, I'll probably put a whole crawler on, but sometimes it's a half a crawler. But a lot of times in these real small streams, just a third of a crawler, or a lot of times the good old fashioned leaf worm. That leaf worm works really well. And sometimes crickets. Crickets work really well. Any kind of meat, really. Wax worms, this, that, anything else. I mean, these fish are opportunistic. They're just looking for a piece of meat to come wafting down a river and eat it.
If you want this crawler to drift naturally downstream, you got slack in your line. How do you tell when you get a bite?
Well, what I do is I'm feathering it with my hand. So I'm right-handed, so I'm holding onto the rod in my right hand. I have my left hand very near my reel spool, and I am just, I have the line in my hand right very near my reel, because I might feel a nibble. I might feel all of a sudden it go slack or something. I can immediately reach down, hit that bail, and spin the reel handle and set the hook.
I remember as a kid, Cedar Creek, Cedar Springs, where I grew up, and it was full of little brookies right there in town, but it was also full of chubs. So we had to work our way through those chubs to get to the trout. But I mean, to me, at the time, it was like the greatest outdoor adventure anybody had ever experienced.
Oh, it's great. And I mean, it'll bring you back to your youth. If that's something you did as a kid, I mean, that's something I did as a kid. I mean, obviously, you don't have a boat. You got a bicycle, right? You bike your way a few blocks down the road, and
yes.
I mean, you got the two Bs, a boat or a bike, one of the two.
What about spinners in these small creeks?
Actually, I have friends. I don't do this as much, but they'll take tiny little daredevil spoons and whatnot, like the kind you fly fish with. They have those real tiny ones. And they'll actually dabble those into small streams and just kind of like lift them and let them flutter downstream under a log jam or something like that. And they catch a lot of trout doing that. Now, I'm just cheap, and I'd just rather lose an Aberdeen hook than I would a daredevil lure. But
so remind me, what are you looking for? Undercut banks, under logs? You're looking for deeper spots in the creek, right?
D, all the above. Sometimes they're, later in the year, they're going to be maybe in some shallower water that's, got some ripples and stuff on top, because it's aerating. There's oxygen being put into the water and stuff, and they're feeding on bugs that are hatching and stuff like that, even in these tiny streams. But overall, this time of year, yeah, anything. It could be, a lot of my best spots. The small stream is literally 3 inches deep, but there's an undercut bank.
Oh my gosh, this is driving me crazy.
And then you throw it up against that undercut bank, and all of a sudden you see this 10-inch brookie come out there and grab it and take it back under. And this is the kind of fishing you get one chance.
Oh, man.
If that fish comes out and misses, there's a 90% chance it's not going to come back out.
He didn't get to be a 10-inch brookie for no reason.
That's exactly right.
Now, do you ever see anybody in your honey holes, or these little private spots that most people just drive right by?
Again, all the above. I've got some spots that I've been fishing forever and hardly saw anybody. But in my area here in the Traverse City area, population's growing. I hate to admit, a lot of times I don't even trout fish on opening day or even the next day, just because there's a lot of eager people out there, and they've been stomping around and doing all sorts of stuff. Sometimes I do better on opening day in the evening because everybody was so excited, of course, going, and they were there in the morning, maybe late morning, early afternoon. Then when things settle down again, yeah, I got a better chance of catching a fish.
I mean, you certainly don't need waders. You probably don't even need hip boots, just knee-high boots, and you can fish these creeks.
Yeah, a lot of times I can go in my tennis shoes where some of the places I fish.
Wow. Now, if you take this to a little bit bigger stream, how do your tactics change?
Well, a little bigger stream, a small river, let's say, or a bigger stream. Some tactics are the same. I would try and if I needed a little bit of weight for the cast or to get it down in a deeper hole, it would be a very tiny split shot. And that might be a spot, too, where you cast a tiny spinner, inline spinner like a Mepps or a rooster tail or a whatever. That kind of thing. So I do use a lot of spinners and small body baits. When I say body baits, like Rapalas and bombers. And
yeah, but you don't want to be losing those in a log jam. That's going to get expensive.
It does get expensive. You're right.
What are we talking
actually, most people try and upgrade their hooks to stronger hooks and stuff like that. Sometimes I'll downgrade my hooks, sharpen them by hand, and if the wire bends out because I had to pull it out of a snag, well, I got the lure back.
So what do we, like 4-pound mono? What are you using?
Oh, well, a lot of times when I'm dabbling in the real small stuff, 4-pound is good. And the only reason I would use 2-pound a lot, but I am hooking, where I'm at, I'm hooking every once in a while a big brown or a steelhead or something like that.
Oh, man.
And that ups my chances a little bit of landing, a nice 24-inch rainbow or something like that.
Dave, this is absolutely fascinating. I'm so glad that we were able to talk this weekend and remind people about this. I'm also excited to go to davidarose.com and see what's there eventually.
Eventually.
In the meantime, I'll look for you on social media, and I'll look for your writing in publications across the state. Always a pleasure, my friend. We'll talk again soon.
I appreciate it. Have a great one, and everybody get out there and do some fishing.
Great advice from Dave Rose, outdoor writer, fishing expert, in my opinion. Although this term expert is interesting, isn't it? Maybe we'll talk more about that in the Ask Avery. So that's what we're going to talk about, being an expert in the outdoors in the Ask Avery segment. But first, we want to talk with Bob Beaudry. He is a winner of the Pure Michigan Hunt, the only Yooper ever to win that hunt. After the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Flint on Sports Extra 1330 WTRX. You can hear us in Houghton Lake on the Twister 92.1 WTWS. And you can hear us north of the bridge in Newberry on WNBY 1450 AM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by the Linwood Beach Marina and Campground. Things are rocking at Linwood Beach. The fishery, the early season fishery, is on fire. They are busy getting boats in the water. The ramps are open. A lot of excitement, a lot of smiles going on at Linwood Beach Marina right now. Check them out online at linwoodbeachmarina.com. That's linwoodbeachmarina.com. They are full-service mechanics. They can get your boat ready to rock, and honestly, just great people, great location, great facilities. I can't say enough about Linwood Beach Marina, linwoodbeachmarina.com. All right, let's turn our attention to something called the Pure Michigan Hunt. I haven't won it yet. I say yet because I'm going to win it. Sometime in my life, I am absolutely convinced of that. The Pure Michigan Hunt is something the DNR has put together that allows 3 people in our state every year to get some great prizes, some great licenses, some great tags, a bear tag, a bull elk tag. Those are the 2 big ones right there. Some gear, some managed waterfowl hunts. I mean, it's a big, big deal. Nobody from the UP has ever won this before. And then along comes Bob Beaudry. And Bob is the first person to win a Pure Michigan Hunt from the UP. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Hey, Bob, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
So tell me about this process when you got notified you had won. That had to be a pretty special day.
Well, to start it off, I bought my ticket or donation there when my son-in-law, Michael Olson, told me, you could win this. Why don't you try, buy a ticket and test your luck? And I said, okay. So when I got my deer tags in August, I donated a $5 for the Pure Michigan Hunt. Never in a million years would I think I'd win something like this. I never win anything. And when Eric called me, I was busy, and I answered after my wife answered the phone, and I thought, okay, somebody's playing a game with me. I don't win anything. And after he told me, I'm like, you're kidding me. It's a dream come true.
Oh,
I was just ecstatic. I didn't know what to do. So I went online and I checked it, because if they drew the numbers or names, I went and verified, and I said, this is not a hoax. This is the real thing. And then I called Michael, my son-in-law, and I said, Mike, you're not going to believe what I just won. And he goes, did you win a truck? Did you win a car? I said, no, I won something bigger. I won the Pure Michigan Hunt. And he goes, no way. And he was going ecstatic. He thought I was giving him a line of, and I said, no. I said, I really won. I verified it. Eric told me, and, oh, man, I still am in a state of shock after all these months even. I'm still in shock that, hey, I won this. First one from the UP, made it icing on the cake.
Oh, so
I said, I'm not going to let the UP down. I'm going to represent them well.
There you go. Good for you. How many applications did you put in then?
I only put one.
Ah!
And there's a lot of people that envy me for that. But I put one tag, and
oh,
I
man.
thought, for 77,000 tags that were, or donations that were donated, mine was one of 3, and I was shocked. I was like, I couldn't believe it.
So what are you looking forward to?
Hunter.
What are you looking forward to most then, Bob?
The elk tag.
Yep.
I got some friends that said it'd be an honor for me to go bear hunting with them. They have a place up in Amazon, Michigan. Duck hunting. My son-in-law's friend, father-in-law, duck hunts down by Saginaw, so we'll go with him. The elk hunt, I have to look for a guide to help me, because I've never elk hunt before. I do go out west and mule deer hunt, but I've never elk hunt. And I'm looking forward to it, especially in my home state. That's just a blessing for me.
This is so cool to have a guy, number one, from the UP, the first Yooper ever to win this, but have somebody like you who is a hardcore hunter, so you can fully enjoy these experiences. What about the gear? You get some pretty good gear too, don't you?
Oh, yes, we did. They said it was going to be a Mossberg pump shotgun, and it turned out to be a semi-auto Weatherby Ducks Unlimited shotgun.
I've
never had a semi-auto, so I'm like, oh, this is great. And then all the other gear too, like from the Turkey National Turkey Association gave us a backpack and a seat. Turkey calls with my name inscribed in the wood. We had hangry, I think it's called hangry for skinning your deer. I got a backpack from Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation for elk hunting. A signed Ducks Unlimited picture. I mean, there was just tons of stuff.
It's like Christmas Day, only better for an adult.
for a hunter, this was like going in a candy store and being a kid all over again.
Well, listen, Bob, congratulations. You give me hope. You say you never win anything. I feel like I never win anything. You got this with just one try, so you've proven that this is the real deal. It's legitimate. I wish you nothing but success, and I can't wait to see the picture this fall of you sitting over that big Michigan bull elk.
Me too.
All right, Bob, have a good day. Appreciate your time again. Congrats.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike.
Pleasure is mine to talk to Bob Beaudry, pure Michigan hunt winner, 1 of 3, and the first one from the UP. Michigan.gov/DNR. You can apply for those right now, but it's not too early. Get started on it now. We'll take a break. When we come back, this week's Ask Avery segment right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Manistee on WMLQ 97.7 FM. You can hear us in Holland on WHTC 1450 AM 99.7 FM. And you can hear us north of the bridge. Let's go to Escanaba, WCHT 600 AM 95.3 FM. The Ask Avery segment is brought to you each week by my friends at Security Credit Union. Security Credit Union loves to work with outdoorsmen and women, and they can help you with your next outdoor adventure. Check them out online at securitycu.org. That's securitycu.org. As a reminder, a refresher, the Ask Avery segment is your opportunity to get involved in the content of the show. You can send me a question that you would like me to answer directly. Best way to get those to me is send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. That's mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. You can also hit me up. And by the way, if you send me an email, put in the subject line Ask Avery or something like that so I can grab it and set it aside and easily reference it in the future. You can also try one of the social media messaging platforms, but to be honest, there are so many of them out there. They tend to get a little bit jumbled up, and I don't always see when you ask me a question. So please send me an email, mike@mikeaveryoutdoors.com. You can send me a question that you want me to answer directly or something that you want me to pass along to somebody else in the DNR or MUCC or whatever. This week's Ask Avery is kind of it was brought up on social media posts regarding my recent turkey hunt, and it involves the question of what is an expert? And this reminded me as we were talking with Dave Rose of Wild Fishing about being an expert. What is an expert? What is an expert in the outdoor field? I don't know how to answer that. But one thing I will tell you, I have never represented myself or called myself or thought of myself as an expert in anything. Anything. I think the biggest way to put a target on your back is to call yourself an expert. And there are a lot of people out there who say they are experts who probably are not qualified to put that title on themselves. If there's anything I have any knowledge of at all, any area of experience, it's more in broadcasting. It's more in the world of outdoor media. But it's not in hunting or fishing. I am not an expert hunter. I am not an expert angler. I am a long-time participant. I am a passionate participant. There is nobody who loves it more than I do. There are lots of people who are much better at it than I am, but nobody loves it more than I do. Every time I go into the woods, every time I go on the water, I relish and cherish the experience. Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. Look at my recent turkey hunt. I thought I was dialed in. I thought I was ready to go. And I wasn't. And I missed a bird because I didn't make a last-minute check of my gear. I did everything else right. I did everything else as an expert hunter would do. I did my scouting. I did my research. I had the blind set up in the right spot. I had the decoy set up in the right spot. I called at the appropriate time. I had 2 long beards coming into my lap, and I couldn't make the shot because I screwed up. Not because I had turkey fever, although I will admit I was pretty excited. If you can have 2 long beards walking into your decoys and you don't get excited, it's time to take up golf and forget about turkey hunting. It was because if you listen to the first segment of the show, I had made a last-minute adjustment to my gear, to my rig, to my crossbow. I put a Tacticam camera on there. At the last minute, I mounted it to the scope rail, and you would not think that would change my point of impact, but it did. So I made a rookie mistake, and it cost me a bird. So I am not an expert at anything. And in fact, I had somebody comment, Avery, you talk... Avery, you talk such a big story. You talk such a big line on your radio show, yet you couldn't get that turkey. You're no expert. No kidding, I'm no expert. And I would like to think that I have never come across as an expert. I would never pretend to be an expert. I would never tell you that I'm an expert hunter or angler. What I am is a guy who's been around for a while. I've had a little experience at this point. I've spent some time in the woods around the water myself, and I have learned a lot of things and made a lot of mistakes. But I do know experts. So when I'm looking for expert advice, I know the people to go to, whether it's hunting or fishing or shooting or trapping. I've been around long enough. I have enough friends. I'm pretty well connected, but I'm not an expert. Even the friends I have who are experts, I'm talking the Romanaks, I'm talking the Valentines, I'm talking the Mark Martins, I'm talking the Johnny Eberhards, the people who are true experts. I think every one of them would tell you they make mistakes, they make the wrong call, and they are constantly learning every time they go out on the water or in the woods. And maybe that's what a true expert is. A true expert is somebody who doesn't think of themselves as an expert, but they're constantly learning, they're constantly evolving, and more importantly, they're having fun out there. That's what I think we need to concentrate on. Just get out there, enjoy the experience, learn every time, make the most of it. Sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not, but you're having fun, you're learning, and you're getting off the couch, getting away from the phone, getting away from the computer, and get out there and have some fun. Thank you to my friends at Security Credit Union for making each week's Ask Avery segment possible. Check them out online at securitycu.org, at securitycu.org. We'll take a break for the top of the hour. When we come back in hour number 3, Drew Youngedyke. He used to be the Chief Information Officer at MUCC, and then he was a media person at the National Wildlife Federation. Now he's been promoted. He's got a new job. He's the head media guy in the country for Trout Unlimited, and he's going to join us here on the Outdoor Magazine show. And then a wild game cooking expert, Dixie Dave Minar, coming up in hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine.
Time now for Michigan's #1 outdoor radio show, Mike Avery's Outdoor Magazine. Mike Avery has covered the outdoors in Michigan for more than 4 decades, and that tradition continues today. Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Jay's Sporting Goods, the Eider Insurance Group, Angler Quest Pontoons and Polarcraft Boats, the Forward Corporation, Primal Outdoors, Security Credit Union, Garber Chevrolet, Brenton USA Hunting Rifles, and by Michigan Brand Meats. Now, here's Mike Avery.
Indeed, this is the big guy, Mike Avery. Thank you, Ken Hunter, for that introduction, and welcome to hour number 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine radio show here on the Outdoor Magazine Radio Network on more than 30 radio stations across the great state of Michigan. But you can also hear the show anywhere, literally anywhere in the world via the podcast version of the show. Regardless of how you are hearing my voice, I do certainly appreciate it. I wouldn't be able to do this without your support. I mean, going way back to the early days of my outdoor television career, I've had very, can I say loyal viewers, listeners, now on social media. And it's very rewarding to me to be able to be in this career for so long. People say, well, you know, you're not a young man anymore, Avery. Are you thinking about retirement? Yeah, I've thought about retirement, and the answer is no. Why would I want to retire? You know, the job isn't physically demanding. I still find it fun. And if I did retire, what would I do? I'd go hunting and fishing, and I'd talk about hunting and fishing. Well, that's what I'm doing right now, and it's still my job. So my plans are not God's plans, and maybe he's got other plans for me. But as far as I'm concerned right now, you're going to be stuck hearing my voice for a long time yet. And I do thank you for joining me. One of the things about this career has been, not just the adventures, the places I've had a chance to go and the experiences that I've had a chance to do, and there have been many, and they've been wonderful. But it's as much as anything, it's the people that I have had a chance to meet and become friends with and work with along the way. People who are willing to step up, to get involved, to promote what they believe in, and not just sit back on the sidelines and watch the world go by. Drew Youngedyke is one of those people. I first met Drew when he was the Chief Information Officer at MUCC. Worked with him very closely there. And then he moved up the line. He got I'm going to call it a promotion. He moved over to the National Wildlife Federation. And now he's made another big jump. And I think he's like the head media guy at Trout Unlimited nationally. And Drew's a Michigan guy, too. He's got strong Michigan roots. And he's with us now on the Outdoor Magazine phone line. Drew Youngedyke, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I always appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you are still on the move. You're still out there promoting what you believe in. Tell me about this newest job, Drew.
Well, thank you. My new role is I'm the National Communications Director for Trout Unlimited. And it's a really exciting role. Frankly, I really love my time at National Wildlife Federation, the work that we did, and the people that I worked with. When I saw this opportunity, though, and what I wanted to do with my career, I could not pass up pursuing it. And I'm kind of lucky that they chose me. So what I'm doing is I'm heading up our national communications strategies on things like the national infrastructure law that's funding a lot of our federal projects across the country, as well as our federal policy activities like protecting the Clean Water Act. But what I really like about Trout Unlimited is when we talk about our federal priorities that I get to now communicate about, what we're talking about is funding that then goes into local communities to do on-the-ground, in-the-stream work like replacing culverts, taking out old dams, putting in stream habitat. That's the bread and butter of the work of TU, and what I get to do is go out to those sites and write about them, and that's pretty fun.
Oh, and how did you get, Drew? How did you get to this point? Remind us of your background. I mean, when I look at your social media posts, I'm reminded of what a strong Michigan heritage and a strong Michigan outdoor heritage you have here.
Well, I appreciate that. And actually, Trout Unlimited was born in Michigan, too, on the banks of the Ausable in 1959. I went to law school, as some folks know, decided that wasn't for me. I actually worked for the Michigan League of Conservation Voters. I worked for MUCC. In fact, it was about a decade ago that, at MUCC, I worked with the DNR to start up the On the Ground program. And that's now celebrating 10 years, which is pretty cool for them. But then, I went to National Wildlife Federation, and that was primarily through a communications role to talk about keeping invasive carp out of the Great Lakes. And that was really rewarding because that we had a goal there to get federal approval and funding for the Brandon Road Lock and Dam. And we accomplished that. We got federal approval, congressional approval for that plan, and we got funding for it. They still have to build it, but that's where our part came in. So I feel like leaving NWF, I left it having accomplished what I came there to do. And now I get to do even more of that on the national scale, which is use communications to advocate for fish conservation. And that's really what I wanted to do with my career.
You talk about Trout Unlimited starting here in Michigan. I had a chance to talk with Art Newman when he was still around, who was one of the founding fathers of Trout Unlimited, if I remember right, wasn't he?
He is, and his motto is still followed by Trout Unlimited. It's one of my favorite lines, and it's, if you take care of the fish, the fishing will take care of itself. A lot of people ask, is Trout Unlimited a conservation or a fishing organization? Well, you listen to that quote, we're a conservation organization. We take care of the fish. If we do that, there's plenty there to catch. And as bad as a trout angler as I am, I need as many in the stream as possible for me to even have a chance at catching them. So I think that's part of my motivation.
Art made me a fly rod. I have played around with it, but I've never caught a fish on it. When I think of Trout Unlimited, I kind of think, and forgive me for framing it this way, but I kind of think as an elitist group of fly anglers who maybe approach the sport differently than somebody who dunks a night crawler in the local creek would.
Well, whether you fish for trout with a night crawler or a fly, what we do at Trout Unlimited is make sure that the trout's there to catch. And it was started by fly anglers, certainly, and I think we're probably mostly fly angler members. But when I hear somebody say that fly angling is elitist, I always cringe a little bit just because of the way that I got into it. You know, I learned to fish with my grandpa, trolling on his boat for pike using electronics. The reason I started fly fishing is when I was in college and didn't have much money, I couldn't afford a boat. I couldn't afford electronics, but I could afford a cheap pair of waders and a starter fly rod. And that's how I got into fly fishing, because I couldn't afford all of the gear that you need for a boat and a motor and electronics and a trailer and a truck to pull it. You know, when I started fly fishing, I was like, well, I already kind of camp out in the Pigeon River sometimes. I think I can afford a cheap pair of waders, maybe try to catch a fish there. And so for me, fly fishing was started because I was a poor college student, really couldn't afford much else.
And you did grow up in northern Michigan with an outdoor family. You talk about the Pigeon River. I mean, you've had some great adventures there. You're an avid outdoorsman, Drew.
Well, it's what my life is, right? And for most, I think, of your listeners too, it isn't just a hobby. It's our lifestyle. And I'm kind of just lucky enough to be able to fall into this career where my work is connected to my lifestyle. And because of that, it kind of doesn't seem too much like work. I'm about to head up to the UP to research some of our in-stream aquatic organism passage projects. That's like replacing culverts that prevent trout from moving through them. So I'm going to head up there. I'm going to write about these projects, but then I'm going to, of course, bring my fly rod and probably stay at my cabin up there and do a little fishing while I'm at it. Well, that's not a bad gig to get paid for.
No, it's not a bad gig at all. When you talk about, you mentioned the term conservation and conservationists. What does that mean to you? Because sometimes in the past, before you and I have had these conversations, I thought about, a conservationist is maybe somebody who is kind of an anti-hunter or angler, but that's not the case at all, is it?
No, look, as conservationists, we use the resources, whether we catch fish to eat, shoot a deer, while hunting to eat. But we don't just use the resources. We take care of the resources that we use to make sure that they're around for future generations. That was part of Trout Unlimited's founding. We catch the fish. We want to make sure there's plenty of fish here in perpetuity. We want to take care of the habitat so that we're not relying just on stocking, that the habitat supports wild fish here for our children to catch and their children to catch and their children to catch. So to me, that's what conservation is you can use the resource, but you make sure that you pay back into the resource and you do the work to take care of the resource so that it lasts in perpetuity.
And now you've got a little guy that you want to make sure you pass this down to him and, as you say, his kids, your grandkids.
Absolutely. My boy's 4 now. I can't believe he's already 4.
Yeah.
But he can cast his own Zebco now. I, of course, being a fly angler, I tie a fly on it, but I put a bobber on it to make sure it's got the weight to carry it out there. So he's catching bluegills on his Zebco, and it's pretty fun to fish with him.
Oh, wonderful. We're talking with Drew Youngedyke. You know Drew. We've had him on the show here many times. Now he's wearing the title of for Trout Unlimited, like the national media coordinator or director. You're going to hear a lot from Drew because he's an interesting guy. He's involved in a lot of interesting projects, and he's got a very interesting background. We got to take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine Show. When we come back, I want to talk more with Drew about Trout Unlimited, about this idea of conservationists, about how we as hunters and anglers are all conservationists. And we will step back a little bit. He mentioned the Brandon Road Lock and Dam. I do want to get, even though he's not with National Wildlife Federation anymore, a little bit of an update there, and we'll see what's coming up next. That's all that, and plus wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar as well, all coming up in hour 3 of this week's Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Houghton Lake on 98.5 WUPS. You can hear us in Lansing on WILS 1320 AM. And you can hear us in St. Joe on WSJM 94.9 FM. This segment of Outdoor Magazine brought to you by Boning Archery. Michigan-based Boning has been a leader in the archery industry for more than 75 years. Think about that. Boning was involved in archery when Fred Bear was first involved in archery. A Michigan-based company. They continue to come up with designs and they innovate manufacturing processes and come up with new products. I mean, they are still a leader in the archery industry after 3/4 of a century, more than that, and they're based right here in Michigan. I would encourage you to check out Boning products. Go to the website boning.com. That's BOHNING. Boning.com to see what they have to offer, see how you might want to take advantage of their products on either the target range or in the field as well. That's boning.com. While you are online, please go to my website, MikeAveryOutdoors.com, and then head over to this website, TU.org. TU.org is the website of Trout Unlimited. Trout Unlimited started here in Michigan many years ago. This weekend is the opener of trout season here in our great state of Michigan. And it seems like a very, very cool coincidence that my guest right now is the new media guy for Trout Unlimited. His name is Drew Youngedyke. Drew was with MUCC, he was National Wildlife Federation, and now he's with Trout Unlimited. Drew, it's a very interesting ride that you're on, my friend.
I wouldn't trade it. You know, again, at the heart, I get to fish, and then I get to write about the conservation of the fish, and then I get paid for it, and that's something I do for free. But I need the paycheck.
Well, looking back, you've never been one to sit on the sidelines, and I'm thinking of MUCC and the proposal. What was it? Fight way back years ago. I mean, you were intimately and actively involved in that at the grassroots level, and you helped get that passed.
Yeah, and G was 1996. That was kind of before my time.
What was the one we were working on at MUCC?
Yeah, the Scientific Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act or Management Act, and that was really good getting to know through MUCC all the sportsmen and women at the sporting clubs. What I really valued about my time there was being able to work on the ground program too, because I think, when I think about conservation, it needs to include, yes, that advocacy. For instance, TU, we fight for the Clean Water Act, for conservation funding at the federal level. But to me, it needs to include that on the ground, fixing habitat, getting people involved. And that's what I really enjoyed about my time there is, being able to go to, for instance, the Saginaw Field and Stream Conservation Club and recruit 30 people to come out and make rabbit-tat. And what I like about TU is they do those type of projects as a matter of course. That's the bread and butter of what they do as an organization, and it's a fun story to be able to tell.
Well, and you are the guy who coined the phrase rabbit-tat, so I thank you for that because I love that word.
No, I have to give that to the DNR. They already had that term. I just got to get everybody to hear about it.
Hey, listen, I don't want to dwell on your past too much, but the Asian carp fight, is it still realistic to expect we can keep Asian carp out of the Great Lakes?
Yes, and what we had always tried to do with that Brandon Road Lock and Dam plan is we needed to get the plan in place and we needed to get it funded so that it could get built. And we, that fight over, 5-6 years, even longer before that to even get that plan in place, that's what we were aiming for. To get that in place, what we need to do from the advocacy and communications realm is get Congress to approve the plan and approve the funding for the plan so that the Army Corps of Engineers could go build it. And so what we were trying to do is really a race against the clock. We need to get those defenses in place before invasive carp are able to get through the Chicago area waterway system and establish a population. Now, we still don't have any big head carp, silver carp, anything like that in the Great Lakes, and that's good. So we haven't lost that yet. There's still 50 miles or so is their leading front from Lake Michigan on the other side of that barrier. So we have some defenses in place. What this funding and this barrier will do is get much stronger defenses in place. And as long as we can get that built before they get past that barrier, then we're still good. And even if every once in a while you hear about one or two that make it past that barrier, they haven't made it into the lake yet, but it takes more than, of course, one or two to establish a population, but it doesn't take much. So it's still a race against time, but we've done the policy and the communication side of it. Now they just have to take the funding that they now have and go build the project.
Well, and that's no small task. And I guess my concern is, you know better than I do about politics and such, but just because the money's been approved, couldn't they come back and reallocate that, steal it, and use it for something else?
Yeah, that's actually fairly rare. I mean, you get proposals like that, but once they've agreed to it, they've started the projects. And of course, I want to really give a shout out to the Michigan DNR in Michigan and the state of Illinois. They've agreed to fund the non-federal portion of it. Michigan has contributed funding. I don't have the exact number, that at my hand, but they contributed funding to that project that's being built in Illinois because it's going to protect Michigan waters.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And so it's been a really great collaboration.
All right. TU, Trout Unlimited, are you guys concerned with Great Lakes fisheries, or is it primarily rivers and inland lakes? What do you look at?
So we look at all of it. Our primary focus is on the cold water habitat for trout. But when you think about something like coast or brook trout in the Lake Superior, that's a behavioral modification of in-stream brook trout that then go out and live part of their lives in Lake Superior. So that's a place where the Great Lakes are certainly impactful. And actually, Trout Unlimited, even when I was working at NWF, was one of the groups that we worked with on raising the alarm for invasive carp, because, of course, something an invasive species that gets into the Great Lakes then goes inland. The rivers flow to the Great Lakes. It's all connected. So we look at improving the stream health and doing the on-the-ground, in-the-water habitat projects to improve habitat for trout. Actually, all across the country, all the different councils have identified their priority waters that they're really dialing in. In Michigan, that includes like coastal brook trout, includes the Pear Marquette, the Manistee, the Manisteek, the Au Sable, the White River. And, pretty much all of those rivers flow to a Great Lake. Really, actually, all those rivers flow to a Great Lake. So we're taking care of often the upstream, in-stream habitat, but it's all connected to the water quality that ends up going into the Great Lakes as well.
All right, so I get it. When you go out to state game area and you create the small game habitat, rabitat, what is involved with creating, with improving the habitat in a river? What are the concerns and how do you address those?
Sure. So especially with trout, and if you think about a species like brook trout, what they require is well-oxygenated cold water. And so the things that warm up water, the things that make that water less oxygenated, make it tougher for them to survive. Those are things like dams. They're things like culverts that they can't pass through to get into upstream reaches, when the downstream reaches get warmer. And so we actually have across the country a $40 million agreement with the Forest Service to go in and, for instance, on Forest Service roads, take out old culverts that block fish passage and replace them with these mini bridges that allow fish passage underneath. That both allows trout to access, hundreds of miles, aggregate, of course, all these projects of new stream miles, but it also makes it so that stream stays colder because it's not being warmed up by that impoundment of water behind those small culverts. Same with a lot of old, aging, failing small dams. We identify those, we do the engineering, we get the grants, we hire the contractors, we do the work, and we remove those. And that does the same thing. So a lot of the work that we do, especially with these priority projects, and the Michigan one is really impressive, led by Brian Burrows, the Michigan executive director for the Michigan Council of TU. It's identifying in all those different watersheds where all these small culverts these small dams, the aquatic organism passage blockages that we need to go in and redo and take out. The other thing that we do is put in-stream woody habitat. So that's actually like putting like a brush pile or trees in the stream, because what happened is back in the lumbering days, those all got scoured out. Well, that's what, that's the habitat and the structure that fish relate to. So it's putting that back in place. And then the other thing that can really cool rivers down is just planting trees. It's restoring riparian habitat to plant native trees that provide shade to that river. All those things cool water down, increase its oxygen level, and make it better habitat for trout.
When you talk about a culvert blocking fish passage, it's just a pipe under a road. Why can fish not get through that?
So a lot of times it's the way that those are built. They're too small. They're perched. So, even though it's a round circle culvert, there's only a trickle sometimes of water that gets through that because it might be perched above the bed of the regular stream. So it doesn't always get through. And even when a little trickle of water gets through at times, it blocks fish from being able to get through. So when you replace those basically with a bridge that allows the stream to flow naturally underneath, then those fish are able to access those upstream reaches.
Well, Drew, I got to tell you, it's always a pleasure. It's nice catching up with you, and I think TU has made a wonderful decision by bringing you on board. You're going to be a strong member and a strong supporter of conservation, as you have been throughout your entire career.
I appreciate that, Mike. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Always a pleasure. We'll talk again. Drew Youngedyke of Trout Unlimited. Now, tu.org. tu.org is the website for Trout Unlimited. We had Brian Burrows on the phone line here on the radio show a few weeks ago talking about some of these similar issues. So it's kind of nice to hear the follow-up from that on Drew Youngedyke. We'll take a break here on the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, a few more thoughts as we get ready to wrap up this week's show. And you know how we will ultimately wrap up this week's show. Yes, you do. Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. I don't know what he has planned for us this week. Sometimes I don't know. I just say, Dave, what do you have? And he never ceases to amaze and sometimes surprise me. My name is Mike Avery. My website is MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. Love to hear from you. Send me the email, Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. More coming up after the break right here on Outdoor Magazine. You can hear the Outdoor Magazine show in Muskegon on WKBZ. That's 1090 AM. You can hear us in Tawas on WIOS, AM and FM, 1480 AM, 106.9 FM. And you can hear us in Saginaw on News Radio 790 WSGW and 100.5 FM. I'm in the studios of WSGW right now. I kind of borrow this little corner of the building for 3 hours every week, and I got a logo behind me, so it's legit. I've been blessed by the powers that be. I don't sneak in here. I'm too big to sneak in anywhere. I'm here with Charlie Rood, doing a wonderful job as always. Charlie, how's the crowd look? I can't see it. Not a bad crowd, and they're here waiting for Charlie to get done. And Charlie's been here since like 2:30 this morning. But they chant and they wave signs, Charlie, Charlie. It's absolutely amazing, the fan base that Charlie Rood has. So he's so gracious to let me share in that time and the experience that is Charlie Rood. It just piles on and gets bigger every week, doesn't it, Charlie? This segment of Outdoor Magazine is brought to you by Reader Landscaping. Reader can take care of your lawn and property because it's your nature and our nurture. Let Reader create an outdoor getaway in your backyard. I've been working with the folks at Reader, doing some maintenance work, some sprinkler work, and also talking with them about some project work. That's a cool thing about Reader is they can do your maintenance, they can do your cleanup, or they can get involved in a full-blown project that'll change the way you look at your house, your backyard, your property. They can honestly create an outdoor getaway so you don't ever have to leave. Why go up north when you can go out the back door and have this beautiful piece of land, an escape? Check them out online at readerlandscaping.com. That's readerlandscaping.com. You will not find harder working crews than the folks at Reader, I can tell you that. It was nice to catch up with Drew Youngedyke. The thing I've always been impressed with Drew is his willingness to step up. And I think about that in today's world. It's kind of an interesting place that we find ourselves as hunters and anglers and shooters and trappers, because we as a group are not really joiners. We are not really people who like to get involved in campaigns. For the most part, I think, and maybe this is an oversimplification, but I think we are people who like to spend some time by ourselves, right? We like to be out on the water by ourselves or with our family or with maybe some close friends. We like to be out in the woods by ourselves or, certainly not big groups. We're not joiners. And that's one of the things that is hurting us, I think, in today's climate, because the groups who disagree with us and who are trying to take away our passion, our way of life, our hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping, again, maybe an oversimplification, but I look at a lot of those people like that is what they do. They are very well at organizing. They are very well at getting their thoughts out there. They are very good at banding together and working towards a goal or a project. Unfortunately, in today's world, oftentimes I think that they're not the best ideas, not the best projects, but it's something we have to learn from. And again, we're not joiners by nature. But I think we have to get better at this. We have to get more involved in I hate to say the political process because I don't want anything to do with that. But when conservation issues come along, when wildlife issues come along, when there's something that could threaten our passions and our pursuits, we can't just sit back and say, oh, somebody else will take advantage. Somebody else will take care of it. Because that somebody else taking care of it might not have the same goals in mind that we do. So I think, as uncomfortable as it can be sometimes, we need to step out of our bubble and step out of our comfort zone and get involved in things. And how do you do that? It doesn't have to be picking up a sign and walking a picket light outside of the Capitol in Lansing. It could take that form, but it doesn't have to be. It can be something as simple as joining your local conservation club, your county gun club, your local conservation club. Join MUCC. I'm a big fan of MUCC. I think they do a wonderful job. Do I agree with everything they do? Of course not. That would be weird. If you have a person or an organization to agree in lockstep with everything they say, every policy they come out with, would just be weird. It wouldn't be. You'd be a sycophant at that point. But find a group that you can align with, find a group that you can support, a group that is conservation-oriented, a group that is pro-hunting and fishing and shooting and trapping, a group that is connected at the local level, the county level, the state level, and join that group. Go to the meetings, hear the issues, and start there. Get involved there. As Drew said, it could be something as small as going out and doing some habitat improvement locally, but at least you're out there doing something. Because if we don't, there are some weird forces at work in the world today, and I don't think they're positive. I don't think they're going the right direction. So we got to stand up for what we believe, whether it's hunting and fishing or whether it's take it wherever you want. And I'll have that discussion with you off air anytime you want. But we're going the wrong direction. We got to get back in the right direction, and we need to get involved. We'll take a break here in the Outdoor Magazine show. When we come back, we'll wrap it all up with a guy who loves to get involved. His name is wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Welcome back to Outdoor Magazine. So glad to have you along with us. And so glad to wrap up each week's show with wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar. Dixie Dave, a good friend of mine. Worked together for many, many years. And I love to have him wrap up each week's Outdoor Magazine radio show, as well as he is once again. David, welcome back. How are you?
I am very good, Mike. Busy.
Well, busy is good, right? Better than being bored.
Yeah, got my food plots all rototilled up 3 times now, trying to kill the weeds.
Nice.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to plant soybeans this year.
Soybeans, okay. Well, that'll work out just fine. And I know you're also starting to get ready for an event coming up here, too. And what is probably a month away at this point. May 20th. Tell me more about that, Dave.
Fred Post is my contact person, and it's for the American Legion there in Sanford, and they'll have tickets. You can call down there, and if there's nobody answering the phone, just leave a voicemail, and they'll sell you tickets. I do not know what the price of the tickets are this year. I'll find that out more. Maybe if we can talk one more time about this. They want to sell around 200 tickets, and they bring the Vietnam traveling wall.
Yeah.
Are you going to be doing the MC for that, or you already got... Did they talk to you about it?
I'm going to be there doing something. Whatever they want me to do, I think. I'll be up there that day as well.
Oh, good. I get to see my buddy again.
Absolutely. So this is this for veterans only, or is this open to the public?
Oh, it's open to the public.
Okay.
They usually have quite a few raffle items and stuff that is pretty darn good. They really get out and beat the payment for this event. We've done it a lot of years in a row, except we haven't done it over the COVID time, but we're going to start back up.
Well, excellent. I look forward to that. That's Saturday, May 20th. Details on that as it gets closer. Also, something I want you to put in your memory bank, and I'll remind you as well. I just got an email from a guy, and I'm not expecting you to answer this right now, but he says, I have a question for Dixie Dave about pigeons. Are they good to eat? I have a lot of plump pigeons on my dairy farm. They eat cow feed, they eat the ground corn, they eat soybean meal. They're very healthy and plump, and they're a huge nuisance. So are they good to eat? So that's my question for you next week. Are they good to eat, and how would you cook up a pigeon?
As a kid, I used to raise pigeons. There's a meat pigeon that gets real fat.
Well, let's
compared to the barn pigeon.
Well, the barn pigeons get pretty fat too. So that's your assignment for next week, my friend. And did I leave you time to do a quick recipe this week?
Okay, we got a breast of turkey royale. It's in croute. So you need about 7-8 ounces per person. Make sure you check a shot if anything's feathers been driven in. A pint of raspberries, 2 eggs, a puff pastry sheet. You can buy that at any good grocery store in the freezer. A couple 3 ounces of razzmatazz schnapps, 8-ounce jar, or even more. I think it's a 12-ounce jar of chicken gravy or turkey gravy. A couple of tablespoons of garlic butter or fresh chopped garlic. 2 ounces of cheddar, shredded Munster cheese, and Philly cream cheese. You want these cheeses to be able to melt real good. Philly helps with that a lot. In a mixing bowl, mix all of the cheese, the schnapps, and the garlic butter or diced garlic real fine. And then while you got that mixed up, leave it set to the side. And you're going to pound the turkey breast out to weigh even less than a half inch. You don't want this to draw up. So you're going to take this puff pastry sheet, cut it into quarters, and you're going to paint it with an egg wash, and then put a spoon of the cheese mixture in the center of the meat, and put 6 or 8 berries along inside that too. And then you take and you start wrapping the dough up, folding it in until you get all done, and then paint that with egg wash. And you're going to bake this at 350 degrees, and it might take as much as 20 minutes. You know, you nice golden brown, and it's going to look gorgeous after you paint the packages of the dough with the egg wash. And then while that's in the oven, heat about 3 ounces of schnapps, some of the berries, gravy, reduce it till it's thick and creamy, and you're going to strain this over 4 plates, put the puff pastry center in the middle, and it's just, you're going to impress so many people. You cannot believe what it's going to be like.
Oh, this one
until you
sounds
try it.
really fancy looking.
But it's really easy. We did this with pheasant for your TV show years ago.
I remember it. I remember it when you started talking about that pastry. I remember it, and I remember it being a pretty impressive looking dish.
It does. You can take and cut strips of that puff pastry, twist it up, like you're going to twist up a shoelace, and make all kind of designs on this. It's just to your imagination. You could cut out little hearts for a Valentine's Day or something like that, and then stick that on with the egg wash too.
David, that sounds wonderful. I appreciate that. Let's plan on doing a pigeon recipe for next week if you're up to that.
You got it.
All right, have a good week, my friend. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Wild game chef extraordinaire Dixie Dave Minar, a big part of the Outdoor Magazine show, as are you, because if you weren't listening, there'd be no reason to do this show, and I don't know what I would do. Please check out my website. It's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. That's MikeAveryOutdoors.com. My email address is Mike@MikeAveryOutdoors.com. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. And if you get a chance, check out our Wednesday night lives. That's every Wednesday night at 7 o'clock on my social media outlets. I also do a live feed from the radio studio Wednesday mornings at 8:45. Lots of ways to stay in touch with me. Hope you get a chance to get out this weekend. Maybe some morel hunting, maybe some turkey hunting, maybe some fishing. It's going to be a great weekend here, regardless of what Mother Nature has in store. My name is Mike Avery, and I'll talk to you next time right here on Outdoor Magazine.